behind an unquestioned legacy in his films. But beyond his films, there is another legacy, in his martial art, Jeet Kune Do. This is not a movie on Bruce Lee. It is the first and only training film on Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee himself. To compile this film, we have had the complete cooperation of the Bruce Lee estate, enabling us to draw, for the first time, from Bruce Lee's private training films and videos, as well as his audio records and his own training and research notes. The film is narrated by Bruce Lee, with additional input from his son Brandon Lee and from Dan Inosanto, the man Bruce chose to carry on his Jeet Kune Do.
My martial art is, in Cantonese, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist.
In case you have missed the recent news, Jeet Kune Do, of which I am the founder, has been elected and accepted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame in America. This marks the first time a recently developed form of martial art is nationally accepted. No, Jeet Kune Do is not thousands or even hundreds of years old. It started in around 1965 by a dedicated and intensified man called Bruce Lee. And my martial art is something that no serious martial artist can ignore.
I met Bruce Lee in 1964 through Ed Parker, who was my Kempo karate instructor at that time. And it was the first year of the first international karate championships held in Long Beach. When Bruce arrived in the United States, he had the training in Wu-style Tai Chi, sometimes in Hong Kong they call it Unga. And he had the, of course, training in Western boxing. He had training in fencing from his brother. That's Epee, that goes from toe to head. He had training, obviously, in Wing Chun. And the other area was the training he had received in, they call it Buk Pai, or it's Tam Toi. He knew 12 sets in Tam Toi. And then believe he traded with a Choi Li Fat man. So those were the arts that Bruce brought into the United States. In the beginning, he used the Wing Chun as the base system, or the first system. But as time went on, he went away from that, started to extract different things from different systems and put it to his personal use. That's why we say absorb what is useful and reject what is useless for you. That's the concept. Okay? He says using no way as a way. In other words, it's not a Japanese way, it's not a Chinese way, it's not a Korean way, it's not an Okinawan way, it's not a Filipino way, it's not an Indonesian way. He's saying using no way as the way. You are the way. Okay? Then he's saying using no limitation as a limitation. That's the concept in Jeet Kune Do. That means I don't limit myself to a Filipino style or an Indonesian style or a Malaysian style. I use what is useful for me, because at certain times a certain art may be useful under a certain environment.
Kung Fu is originated in China. It is the ancestor of karate and jiu-jitsu. It's more of a complete system, and it's more fluid. Kung Fu can be practiced alone or with a partner. Practicing alone, they involve form. Some imitate a crane, a monkey, a praying mantis.
Martial art include all the combative arts like karate or karate, judo, Chinese kung fu or Chinese boxing, whatever you call it. All those. You see, like Aikido, Korean, I can go on and on and on. But it's a combative form of fighting. I mean, it's not, some of them became sport, but some of them are still not. I mean, they use, for instance, kicking to the groin, jabbing fingers at the eyes and things like that.
He mixed his trapping into grappling. He had 32 different sequences, as you could see in The Game of Death and the Way of the Dragon. Those two films, he was getting into grappling, the face locks, the head locks.
Originally, Bruce taught us various different trapping methods. For instance, if the punch was to come and we were to trap it, we would come back here and we would lock up. This would be the lock-up positions that we would use.
To me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, now that, my friend, is very hard to do. Ever since the big boss, there seems to be a wave, a hot wave, in fact, of finding another Bruce Lee among all types of people, particularly martial artists, ranging from karate man, hapkido man, judo man, etc., etc. Forgetting about whether or not they possess the ability to act just so as they can halfway decent to kick or punch, and hopefully knowing a few tricks or gimmicks, the producers will make them a star. Now let's stop about here. Is it that simple to become a star? Well, I can assure you it's not that simple. Also, I can tell you that as more Bruce Lee's films are shown, the audience will soon realize not only in acting ability, but in physical skill as well, they will see the difference. For example, in The Way of the Dragon, my skill is matched with an American champion, Chuck Norris, who happens to be a 7-time winner of both the All-American Open and World Karate Championship as well. Then there is Bob Wall, the 1970 heavyweight karate champion, plus Wang Yanjik, the 7th degree Hapkido expert, which some audience have seen him in the film called Hapkido. Of course, it is only movie making, people will say, but I'm sure that the audience are not so insensitive as to not be able to see and judge by themselves and compare these men's speed, power, rhythm, coordination, versatilities, etc., etc.
I started training with my dad really as soon as I could walk. I mean, my dad was a really diligent trainer, and he always had people over at the house practicing.
My dad had a circle of students that were close to him, and so they were friends of our family. And one of those men, Danny Inosanto, continued to be my teacher, so it was kind of a nice unbroken line.
I have his books at home with all of his underlining and his notes in them, and it's fascinating to see where he drew his sources from, from what sources he drew. He's got books on Western fencing at home that he would use, on boxing. I remember he always used to say that you want to try and absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is essentially your own, and that was kind of his credo in creating Jeet Kune Do.
When people ask me the question in interviews generally what my style is, I usually say, well, my father created the art of Jeet Kune Do while he was alive, and I have been trained in that. Because it's simple to say that. However, I actually truly feel that it's a little bit too simple to say that, Because Jeet Kune Do was my father's very personal expression of the martial arts. He intended it to kill a lot of sacred cows. So I always feel a little bit silly saying that I practice Jeet Kune Do, although I certainly have been trained in it. Yeah. It would be more accurate to say that I practice my own interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, just as, frankly, everyone who practices Jeet Kune Do does, because that's what it was intended to be. Danny, my Sifu, always talks about teaching Jeet Kune Do concepts. In other words, teaching someone the concepts, a certain way of thinking behind the martial arts, as opposed to teaching them techniques. To me, that kind of illustrates the difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them how to fish. You know that old story, right? You can teach someone a certain block, and then they have that block. Or you can teach someone the concept that lies behind such a block, and then you have given them an entire area of thinking that they can grow and evolve in themselves. They can say, I see, so if that's the concept, then you could probably also do this, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of what lies behind Jeet Kune Do, and that is then dedicated to creating a really creative, free-form martial artist.
You see, actually, I do not teach, karate, because I do not believe in styles anymore. I mean, I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically, we have only 2 hands and 2 feet.
Unless we have other group of beings on Earth that are structurally different from us, then there might be a different style of fighting. Now, why is that? Because we have 2 hands and 2 legs now. The important thing is how can we use it to the maximum in terms of path, well, straight lines, curved lines, round lines. They might be slow, but depending on the circumstances, sometimes that might not be slow. And in terms of legs, you can kick up straight, same thing, right? Now, and after all that, then you ask yourself, how can you honestly express yourself at that moment? And being yourself, when you punch, you really want to punch. Not you want